Hey, it's Hammer Time. This is a special episode of Hammer Time. We are here in the office of Senator Jeff Flake. Senator, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for coming here. Thanks for not making me go outside. It's cold out there. But.
When I'm in D.C. and this time of year, it reminds me of why I now live in Arizona.
That's right, exactly.
I'm going to ask you to reflect a little bit on your distinguished congressional career in a moment, but I want to first start with you've played a major role, a very positive role in what's going on right now as we speak with trade. You helped organize a meeting several months ago with a number of Arizona business leaders, with Ambassador Lighthizer, to talk about the importance of renegotiating successfully NAFTA.
The chamber's been spectacular. Most states don't have what we have in Arizona. We're a very engaged chamber of commerce and businesses who know and understand the value of trade, particularly with Mexico. And so it's easy for those of us who are in elected office to have a group to work with that way and to make the case. And I think it has helped. We thought for a while that NAFTA was going to go away and nothing would replace it. Those dealing with produce in particular would be disadvantaged relative to those in other areas of the country.
You're talking about some of the tomato
Yes,
issues.
Exactly, and that's why I think that meeting had a great effect, and we had to play a little hardball for a while in terms of appointments and whatnot. But in the end, we're hopeful that what follows NAFTA will allow Arizona to continue with the benefits that it has. And Mexico as well. It's been good, and certainly Canada too. Trade is good. It's not a zero-sum game, and it's been difficult with this administration to make sure that they understand that and that they know how much it has been so good for Arizona. We need to keep it up.
I can't emphasize enough how important your work has been to get us to this point, because the impact on Arizona's economy, some years the difference between Arizona growing and being in recession has been our trade with Mexico. It's that important.
And it's not just on the economic side, on the security side as well. We've had a better situation on the border over the past several years because Mexico has done better. We've had net migration flows with regard to Mexico southward. We still have issues, obviously, with the Northern Triangle countries, but we have a much better situation, obviously, economically, and with regard to security as well.
You signed a letter that I believe Senator Toomey circulated, and Senator Kyle's also on it to try to get this done in the lame duck session. Do you believe that's possible?
It is possible. It's we've got to get something done by the end of the week. We spoke about it at lunch yesterday, and Senator Toomey's really been dogged on this, gratefully. When you know the lay of the land right now with regard to who's in which positions, it behooves us to move right now and get this done before some uncertainty comes in January. We just don't exactly know how the House will perceive this.
You've also, over the years, been a leader on immigration reform. You talk to any Arizona business right now, high tech, agriculture, it doesn't matter. They will say it's workforce, workforce, workforce. What are the prospects of, you've put a lot of effort into this, and I do think some of this is connected to trade and NAFTA, because there is a NAFTA visa within the new agreement. But just your thoughts on how does Congress finally move forward and get some sort of deal done here?
This is something I introduced the first immigration bill very soon after I came to Congress 18 years ago. And I've worked on several iterations since, but it's always had to do with increasing the workforce and making sure that our economy can move forward, both on the lower skill side and the higher skill side. It used to be that we could have taken just about any one of those constituent parts, or dealing with the Dreamers, for example, and passed that on its own, but we left it as part of a bigger package so we could move it all, and that certainly hasn't worked. And the difficulty now is it's difficult to think of moving any one of those constituent parts on their own. The environment has changed significantly, and without leadership from the White House, it's doubly difficult. The hope is that the president is really insistent that he gets some of the measures on the border that he wants, and that perhaps can be used as leverage to include some of the other items that we really need for workforce.
Before coming to Congress, you had a very distinguished career building up the Goldwater Institute. We're at a point in time where I'd argue both parties, there's some populism that's boiling over. And just sort of the standard Ronald Reagan free market ideals aren't always being followed or accepted. And I just wanted to get your thoughts, and particularly with the younger generation, it concerns me a little bit that there's a flirtation even with socialism. You've been a great voice for standard pro-free market policy for the course of your career during different stops. What do we need to do?
We are in the throes of populism right now, and on the right we've seen that certainly with my party. And on the left we're seeing, as a response to that, more kind of populism on that side. And what it does is drive everybody to the extremes. And populism is, fine during an election, but it's really not a governing philosophy. And so I do think that we need to get back to, limited government, economic freedom, individual responsibility, free trade. Those are the principles that have animated the conservative movement, certainly. And I think, those are certainly principles that you can govern with, and we have, and it's made Arizona what it is today. I'm very concerned about where we go, in the next election and elsewhere, because we're basically in a perpetual election cycle now, and so populism kind of reigns, and it's tough to govern that way.
In addition to being, I'd argue, a consistent conservative, you've always treated just the way you interact with others. It's always positive. It's always civil, and I know the. Senator Kyle's always talked about the importance of making sure that we could have civil conversations to address the nation's tough issues. Any thoughts on how we get to a point where there's just more civility up and down the system?
Well, it's just kind of a sign of the times, and this kind of, along with populism has come this kind of rancor as well, this intense partisanship. And in Arizona, we've avoided some of that, and we've fallen prey to some of that. Ed Pastor passed away overnight. Ed was, very much to the left of where I was. He was a consummate gentleman, and he was caring and loving, and there's no way you could get mad at Ed or to think that he would act in a partisan manner. And I think, if we can all just remember that in the end, certainly those of us representing Arizona are doing it to the best of our abilities, and may have a different philosophy, but we're all trying to benefit the state. During
the course of your career, you took on something that all the experts said was impossible, earmarks. When you look back, do you believe that eradicating earmarks, and I believe you worked with Senator McCain over the years on that policy, has that worked out the way you felt it should?
Some people will talk about, well, we don't have earmarks, so it's tough to grease the skids for legislation, and that's kind of the sign of the breakdown that we've had in the appropriations process. I should point out that in 2005, which was the heyday of earmarking, 16,000 earmarks worth about $40 billion, we only moved 3 or 4 appropriation bills that year. So if that was
the bridge to nowhere?
Yeah, that was the bridge to nowhere, and all the others. And so it really wasn't greasing the skids to make the place move. What it was doing, it was putting a couple of our colleagues in jail, and it just led to horrible corruption. And worse than that, Congress had given up its oversight responsibilities. We'd spent so much time securing that one earmark for this project or that we let go the 98% of funding that was outside of earmarks, and we simply quit doing oversight because all of our time and effort was spent, I say, as a body, securing those earmarks. And so it's something that had to change, and it did, and I'm glad it did.
There was a national defense assessment that just came out that sort of the punchline is that we're not keeping up the way we need to with China and Russia, and a big part of it is budget stability. And we've got entitlements that continue to soar, massive debt. Is there a possibility at some point for a grand bargain to get our defense spending on more of a, I won't say like an entitlement type plane where there's stability in the funding, but some sort of course correction on our entitlement
Yeah,
situation?
it's going to have to be a grand bargain. It's tough to see how that happens now. It takes presidential leadership. This president has kind of said, I'm not going to touch those entitlement programs, and those are the real drivers of the debt. Defense has increased significantly. It is needed to, but not nearly at the rate that all other funding has. So we've got to fix it.
I wouldn't be doing my job at Chamber of Business News if I didn't ask. You've had a distinguished career. I know that there's a lot more that's next. Any news you want to break on Chamber of Business News?
Going back to the farm in Snowflake, it's back to the ranch. No, there's some good opportunities out there, and we'll talk about that after January 3rd. We've still got a lot to do here.
Senator, thank you so much for your distinguished leadership, and thank you for being on the show.
You bet.
Thank you.